Hey Sue, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Got a little bit of a cold, but I'm okay.
How's the weather, Rachel?
It's pretty warm um right now, but I think it's supposed to get cold tomorrow.
It's very rainy here.
Is it? Oh, yeah, it started raining here about noon, but it was nice this morning. But I guess there's fires out by Asheville, so I guess it's good that
Oh
we're getting
dear.
some rain. Yeah. Hopefully that'll put out the fire.
I understand they finally got water back.
Yeah. So, hmm.
Hello, Chris.
He's trying to log in.
Well, he can come and sit next to you.
He could. Oh, my phone's ringing. Hang on.
There you are. Chris, you didn't have anything from Fred that said, oh,
Okay. Can you hear me?
you didn't have anything from Fred that said he would not be here. I did
Well,
last week, but not this week.
he's having some trouble. Rachel just got a phone call from him.
Okay,
So, um, she's trying to send him the proper link or whatever. I don't know.
okay.
Sorry, I just got my headset working. So if you were speaking to me, I wasn't ignoring you. I was just
That's perfect. I understand.
uh,
So
this
Fred is having trouble with the link?
that's what I understand, yes. But Rachel's sending it to him, so we'll see if he can get in. But he won't be the administrator one. I don't know. This is all beyond me.
Yeah, I think as long as we're in, it's okay. I don't think we need an administrator, but I don't know. But I just sent it to him, so hopefully he'll get it.
Well, you can hear me cough through your speakers. Nice.
Oh yeah, sorry.
My fault.
You have a cold too?
Yeah, I gave it to her.
Oh dear,
Yeah.
not nice.
He was sick for several days, and I just about the moment I thought, oh, maybe I escaped. No, I got sick. Did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
I did.
Good, good.
My grandson's mother-in-law lives about a half an hour away from where I live now, and
Oh.
she invited me for Thanksgiving, so it was very
Oh,
nice.
oh, nice. That's wonderful.
Let's see if this is Fred.
Yep.
Maybe.
I wonder who HP1 is. There he is.
Ah,
He
there you
is.
go.
So it worked. Thanks, Rachel.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Anytime.
Okay. John's not going to be here. He mailed me. He's on a trip to San Antonio.
Okay.
So I think it may be just us tonight.
Okay.
And so the parsha that we're going to be reading this Shabbat is Vayishlach, and that's Genesis, starting chapter 32. And basically, we're picking up the story of Jacob. When this one starts, Jacob has already finished his 20 years with Laban. He already has his wives and his kids, and he's left Laban and he's headed for home. But first, he's going to have to meet his brother Esau. And that reading starts with chapter 32, and the first part goes from verse 4 through verse 13. Somebody wants to read that.
Sure. If you can deal with my nasaliness, I'll do it. Then Jacob sent, how far do I go, Fred? I'm sorry, 4 to,
From 4 through 13.
okay, thank you. Then Jacob sent angels ahead of him to Esau his brother to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. He charged them, saying, Thus shall you say to my lord to Esau to send, so said your servant Jacob. I have sojourned with Laban and have lingered until now. I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, servants, and maidservants, and I am sending to tell my lord to find favor in your eyes. The angels returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother, to Esau. Moreover, he is heading toward you, and 400 men are with him. Jacob became very frightened, and it distressed him. So he divided the people with him, and the flocks, cattle, and camels into 2 camps. For he said, If Esau comes to one camp and strikes it down, then the remaining camp shall survive. Then Jacob said, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Hashem who said to me, Return to your land and to your relatives, and I will do good with you. I have been diminished by all the kindness and by all the truth that you have done for your servant. For with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Rescue me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me down, mother and children. And you had said, I will surely do good with you, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, which is too numerous to count.
Yeah. There's some interesting things about that. One is, the very introduction is that he goes to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. Seir in Hebrew means hair. Edom comes from Adom, which means red. And of course, Esau was the red hairy twin. That's where both of those words come from. Um, the text you were reading that says he sent angels, ahead. Um, you're probably reading from the Art Scroll because that's pretty much the only one that translates that way. The Hebrew word is malach, which can be translated either as angel or as messenger.
Yeah,
And most people,
my Bible says messenger.
yeah, most do. But there are some among the Orthodox who really believe that Jacob was attended by angels all the time. And so they like to translate Malach as angels. But
Okay.
it probably is messengers. That really fits in better with the story. One of the things which the text doesn't tell us, really is how Esau knew that Jacob was coming back. How was there any communication that way? Um, And you'd think that Jacob would want to sneak home and not have and avoid having to meet Esau. He only left in the first place because his mother told him Esau was going to kill you. Get out of town. And this is 20 years later, and he has no idea how Esau feels about him at this point. And so it's interesting that he should send messengers to Esau. You think that he would want to just try to sneak by without anybody even knowing, that he's there. Um, then the second part, goes is the meeting, is setting up the meeting, and that's verses 14 through 22. Somebody wants to read that one.
After spending the night there, he selected from what was at hand these presents for his brother Esau: 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milch camels with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 he-asses. These he put in charge of his servants, drove by drove, and he told his servants, go on ahead and keep a distance between the droves. He instructed the one in front as follows: when my brother Esau meets you and asks you, whose man are you, where are you going, and whose animals are these ahead of you, you shall answer, your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to you, my lord Esau, and Jacob himself is right behind us. He gave similar instructions to the second one and the third, and all the others who followed the droves, namely, thou shalt so shall you say to Esau when you reach him, and you shall add, and your servant Jacob himself is right behind us. For he reasoned, if I appropriate him with presents in advance and then face him, perhaps he will show me favor. And so the gift went on ahead while he remained in camp that night.
But basically, he's preparing for Esau, and the step one is to try. In a sense, it's a bribe, really. So what he's really setting up. He's hoping, this is kind of payment for the way I screwed you back when we were kids, 20 years ago. And actually, the way he's setting up is dramatic. He doesn't want the gift all at one time. We're going to have a bunch of animals here, and then when Esau is, looking at that, then a second gift comes in, and then a third, and on and on. It kind of reminds me, there used to be these late night shows where they would sell, like I think it was Ronco, they would sell all these gadgets. And the way it went is, and we give you 5 of these, for $44.99. But wait, there's more. We'll throw in 2 of these, and then on and on and on. If you order within the next 10 minutes, we'll add 5 of those. And that's kind of what Jacob is doing. He's trying to make the gift as impressive as he can. Um, he and Esau basically are on both sides of the Yabok River. And the Yabok is one of the main tributaries of the Jordan. It comes into the Jordan from the east, about 20 miles north of the Dead Sea. So Jacob is coming from north to south. He's in Gilead, which is, further north on the east of the Jordan. He's coming south. Edom basically is sort of where the Sinai Desert starts. So he's coming up from the south, and they're going to meet, at the Yabok River. Um, and then, of course, one of the famous episodes here is Jacob wrestling with the man the night before. And that's described in 23 through 30. Someone wants to read that.
Sure.
Quick question.
Oh.
Yeah.
The numbers of the flocks, does that, sorry, I'm hearing myself and Rachel's speaker and it's throwing me off. Does that signify how important they were, or how much they cost? Like there's only, 10 or 20 she donkeys and 10 he donkeys, but there's 200 she goats. Are the donkeys
Yeah.
worth more than the goats, or?
I assume that. Yeah. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, so I don't know really. Um, there's only 10 bulls, so you figure, and bulls probably are very valuable animals, so that kind of figures. There are some speculations. Some of the rabbinic interpreters say that those numbers all have significance, but nobody knows what the significance is. But I think you're probably right. It probably reflects the value of the animals, how many you can spare of each animal, pretty much. So somebody wanted to do 23 through 30.
Sure. And he rose on that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 slave girls and his 11 boys, and he crossed over the Jabbok ford. And he took them and brought them across the stream, and he brought across all that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And he saw that he had not worn out against him, and he touched his hip socket. And Jacob's hip socket was wrenched as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for dawn is breaking. And he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, not Jacob shall your name hence be said, but Israel, for you have striven with God and men and won out. And Jacob asked and said, tell your name, pray. And he said, why should you ask my name? And there he blessed him. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, meaning I have seen God face to face, and I came out alive.
Yeah. And that's um, the whole thing here. Crossing the Yabok at night really is a big point. because apparently the Yabok in those days, not anymore, but the Yabok and the Jordan were both really big rivers. And you can only cross at certain places where the fords were. And apparently these were places where there were stones, in the riverbed, and you could walk on these stones and get across, which would be hard enough to, he's got this his wives, his kids, his servants, all these animals, and then he's doing it at night, which would make it very, very hard to see the stones. So this is kind of a major enterprise, just crossing the river at night. And some of the commentators have pointed out, crossing a river in a lot of mythologies is kind of a light, sort of symbolic of changing your life. Sort of like, we use the expression crossing the Rubicon, when Caesar crossed the Rubicon and changed his destiny. So in a sense, it can be looked at as symbolic, crossing the river. Now he's getting ready for a new phase of his life. And, it's often described as wrestling with an angel, but the text just says Ish, which is a man. And so there are about 15 different speculations on what he actually wrestled with. Was it God in human form? Was it an angel that took the form of a man? Was it a demon? Most mythologies, demons only work at night. They're like vampires. They have to go up before the sun comes up. And here, this guy says the sun's coming up. I gotta go. So some of the rabbis thought it was a demon that he wrestled with, and there's actually one modern interpretation that he was wrestling with himself. He's having to face all his past sins, what he did to his brother, the way he tricked his father, the way he cheated Laban, all the sins of his life. He's finally turning around and facing. It's sort of like this is when Jacob grows up. This is where he enters the mature phase of his life.
I have
Um,
heard that. I think that like the way that I heard it, it turned very strongly on the point where that Jacob was left alone and a man wrestled with him. And so the person was making the point like, well, who are you wrestling with if you're alone?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, and again, if it really were an angel or God, how was Jacob going to win? It's so the other point, of course, is that he reaches into the hollow of the thigh. And if you look at the next few verses, which is verse 33, which is really very important if you keep a kosher home. Therefore, the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew on the hip socket to this day, because he struck Jacob's hip socket on the displaced sinew. Most of the translations call that the sinew of the thigh. The Hebrew was Gedi Hanasha, which doesn't occur anywhere else in the Bible. Nobody's really sure what it means. And the real problem is the Bible is kind of hopeless on anatomy. You can't really describe things with using the biblical vocabulary. There's no biblical Hebrew word for artery, for vein, for nerve, for tendon, for ligament, for cartilage. I mean, there's really no way of knowing this. Um, but the weird thing is that the rabbis in the Greco-Roman period interpreted this as the sciatic nerve, which is really almost impossible given what he's describing. The sciatic nerve arises in the lower back. Actually, there's a sciatic artery, vein, and nerve, and they all run together in a connected tissue sheath. They emerge from the lumbar spine. They go down through the buttocks and down the back of the leg. If you've ever had sciatica, you know exactly, where the nerve runs. But there's really almost no way to damage the sciatic nerve with trauma to the hip. I mean, the anatomy just doesn't work out that way. And but that's what the rabbis decided that it was, and it's really the main reason why kosher meat is so expensive. Basically, when you to remove that sciatic bundle from the hind quarter of an animal without shredding up the meat and making it useless is very, very skilled work. It's really high class surgery, really. There are very few kosher slaughterhouses that have anybody with the skill and the experience to do it right. And what they often end up doing is just discarding the hindquarters of the animal. Some kosher slaughterhouses have a contract to sell it to non-kosher meat packers, so they get some profit from it. So basically, and in very Orthodox homes, they won't, just to be extra sure, they won't eat anything that comes from the back part of the animal. You can only use cuts from the front, which is why if you go to dinner in a really kosher home, if you get beef, 9 times out of 10, it will be brisket. That's always been the favorite beef cut because it's from the front of the animal and there are no questions about the sciatic nerve with that. But it still leaves the question, that why the rabbis pick that. Because, the sinew of the thigh, and there are 15 structures around the hip joint that would fit that description, most of which are very easy to remove and wouldn't have been any problem at all. And, my theory really is that what the rabbis were really saying was that you were never meant to eat meat in the first place. You only got permission to do it after Noah's flood. God gives Noah permission to eat meat. And so really it's only a concession to human weakness to begin with. And so, if you have to eat meat, you can eat meat. Well, we're going to make it as difficult and expensive as we can, which is what it really amounts to. Yeah. The other thing, of course, which is part of this is no longer will it be said that your name is Jacob, but Israel. He undergoes a name change just as Abraham has. And of course, in Hebrew, this is Yisrael. El, of course, is one of the old names for God. And Sarah, the verb Sarah means to wrestle or struggle. So Yisarah means he will struggle or he will wrestle. So Yisarael, he will struggle with God. But the odd thing about this name change is, Abraham changed his name from Avram to Avraham. And after that, you never see Avram mentioned again in the Bible. He's always Avraham. Jacob changes his name to Israel, but if you read on, the Bible keeps on referring to him as Jacob. Half the time he's Jacob and half the time he's Israel. So apparently the name change with him didn't really take the way it did with Abraham. Even later in the Bible, when you read the prophet and they're referring back to the patriarchs, sometimes they call him Jacob, sometimes they call him Israel. So his name change didn't really take the way Abraham's name change did for whatever reason. Okay. And then he comes back to Canaan, and settles there. And so well, actually, there is, let's see, there is one more part to it. Let me look here. Um, yeah, then the next part is the reconciliation between the two brothers. And that's described in chapter 33, and it's verses 1 through 17.
Sure, I'll grab that. And the
Somebody want to
question,
read those? Yeah.
yeah, I'll do it. But speaking of meat and whether we're supposed to eat
Mhm.
it or not, um, and this is total sidebar, and if you want to get into it, that's fine. This the fake meat, the lab grown meat that's coming out nowadays.
Mhm.
Do you think that the whatever the kosher certifying bodies will certify this stuff as kosher since wasn't slaughtered and in the proper way and didn't come from an animal, or do you think they'll just go with the flow?
I don't know. I've read a couple of articles about that, and apparently there are some Orthodox rabbis who say it's okay, and others who say it isn't. And it's kind of unsettled, for the time being. But, if artificial meat gets to really be a big thing, and like if it takes over half the market or something, they'll probably have to make a decision about it one way or the other. And then the question will be, what group of rabbis has the right to make that decision? Reform will ignore it anyway because they don't keep kosher to start with. And among the Orthodox, there's several. Because I said, and each follow their own rebbe, for what the law is. And of course, in Israel, you have this group of you have Ashkenazic and Sephardic chief rabbis who decided for Israel. So it's not like when we had the Sanhedrin and they would come up, with the law and everybody follows it. So it's probably going to be some do and some don't. I think is the way it's going to end up. Yeah.
Okay. So through what you said, 13?
1 through 17 on
Oh,
33.
17.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Jacob raised his eyes and saw, behold, Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two handmaids. He put the handmaids and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he himself went on ahead of them and bowed earthward 7 times until he reached his brother. Esau ran toward him, embraced him, fell upon his neck, and kissed him. Then they wept. He raised his eyes and saw the women and children, and he asked, "Who are these to you?" He answered, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the handmaids came forward, they and their children, and they bowed down. Leah too came forward, and with her children, and they bowed down. And afterwards Joseph and Rachel came forward and bowed down. And he asked, "What did you intend by that whole camp that I met?" He answered, "To gain favor in my Lord's eyes." Esau said, "I have plenty. My brother, let what you have remain yours." But Jacob said, "No, I beg you. If I have now found favor in your eyes, then accept my tribute from me, inasmuch as I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of a divine being, and you were appeased by me. Please accept my gift, which was brought to you, inasmuch as God has been gracious to me, and inasmuch as I have everything." He urged him, and he accepted. And he said, "Travel on and let us go. I will proceed alongside you." But he said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and the nursing flocks and cattle are upon me. If they will be driven hard for a single day, then all the flocks will die." It's a little dramatic. "Let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will make my way at my slow pace, according to the gate of the drove before me, and the gate of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir." Then Esau said, "Let me assign to you some of the people who are with me." And Esau said, "To what purpose? Let me just have favor in my Lord's eyes." So Esau started back that day on his way toward Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house, and for his livestock he made shelters. He therefore called the name of the place Succoth.
Yeah. So, this really, to me, makes Esau really look good, a lot better than his brother. And, first of all, Jacob is doing a major sucking up job. I mean, he's addressing Esau as my Lord, your face is like the face of God, except, then bowing 7 times and, the whole deal. Um, and Esau really, who had 400, I mean, he can kill Jacob, take everything he has, and there's nothing to stop him. And you really have to ask which brother is acting more nobly here. I've always been a kind of a secret Esau fan, but I think maybe he should have gotten the birthright. But in a way, though, I think you can probably make a case that they both got what they wanted. Esau really is a very successful man. He has his own country. He obviously is wealthy and successful. He doesn't need Jacob's gifts. He has his own militia, who he brings with him. And so, in a sense, you can almost say that Esau gets the equivalent of the physical birthright. He has all the material wealth, he could ever want, which is part of the birthright. And Jacob got the spiritual birthright. So, you could maybe say that both brothers got what they wanted, or what fit them. The odd thing, though, is at the very end, when Esau said, "Well, let's go together, I'll accompany you." And Jacob is clearly lying. The stuff about, we can't walk the cattle too fast or whatever it is. And so, the theory the rabbis have is, this wrestling with the angel or whatever the night before, Jacob is now transformed. He's now a new man. He's basically the same old Jacob. He's lying again, essentially. He has no intention of going to Seir with Esau. He doesn't want to see Esau again, really. He's still worried that Esau may secretly be plotting to do something to him. And so he lies. And Esau offers him a few of his militia as an escort to go back. And Jacob wiggles out of that too. So you really have to ask whether Jacob really has changed that much. He has no problem sucking up to Esau and then lying to him, with this encounter between the brothers. Okay. And then the next part of this is in chapter 34. And here we read about the rape of Dinah, which is another one of the major subjects here. And that starts off really, again, with the first 17 chapters first 17 verses, rather, of chapter 34. Somebody wants to read that.
Sure. And Dinah, Leah's daughter, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to go seeing among the daughters of the land. And Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite prince of the land, saw her, and took her, and lay with her, and abused her. And his very self clung to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman, and he spoke to the young woman's heart. And Shechem said to Hamor his father, saying, Take me this girl as wife. And Jacob had heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter, and his sons were with his livestock in the field. And Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, Shechem's father, came out to Jacob to speak with him. And Jacob's sons had come in from the field when they heard, and the men were pained, and they were very incensed, for he had done a scurrilous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, such as ought not to be done. And Hamor spoke with them, saying, Shechem my son, his very self longs for your daughter. Pray give her to him as wife, and ally with us by marriage. Your daughters you will give to us, and our daughters take for yourselves, and among us you will settle. And the land is before you, settle and go about it, and take holdings in it. And Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Name me however much bride price and clan gift. I will give what you say to me, and give me the young woman as wife. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully. And they spoke as they did, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said to them, We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to a man who has foreskin, as that is a disgrace for us. Only in this way may we agree to you. If you will be like us, every male to be circumcised, then we can give our daughters to you, and your daughters we can take for ourselves, and we can settle among you and become one folk. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, we will take our daughter and go. And their words seemed good in the eyes of Hamor and the eyes of Shechem, son of Hamor.
Yeah, stop there. Yeah, there's a lot in there. First of all, the very first sentence, she went out to see the daughters of a land. Girls didn't do that in those days. You don't go out, unaccompanied single women didn't go walking around by themselves. So you sense it's one indication that Jacob is losing control of his family. We don't know, how the Bible's not good on chronology, so we don't know how much time has passed between the meeting with Esau and when this rape of Dinah happens. But Jacob looks at this point as if he's kind of over the hill, and there are more signs of it as the story progresses. Um, he's lost control over his daughter. She feels free to just leave the family compound and go wandering off by herself. And the other thing is the rape of Dinah. In the modern world, we're taught that rape is really not about sex. It's about violence and domination. Um, but here he falls in love with her, which is kind of weird. But it raises a question which sounds crazy in our culture. But did he rape her because he loved her? You think, now, wait, well, how does that work? Well, later on when we get to, I think, Leviticus, you learn they have a series of laws. If a virgin is raped, the man who rapes her has to marry her. If her father, he has to pay a bride price to her father. He has to marry her, and then he's not allowed to ever divorce her. And you think, wait a minute, what kind of deal is that? The woman is forced to marry her rapist. But again, the man has to support her for the rest of her life. And so, which might make you think twice about that. And then again, a woman, who's no longer a virgin, who else is going to marry her? In a society where virginity is an absolute essential thing, for marriage. Once she's been raped, who else is going to marry her? And so, the final decision, of course, is up to the father. The father can accept the money from the one who raped the daughter and still not give him the daughter if he doesn't want to, or he can if he figures nobody else is going to marry her, then he will give his daughter in marriage. And this possibly is what's going on here. He may have raped her because he wants to marry her. Um, and then, of course, the next thing is when Jacob finds out about it, he keeps silent. He waits till his sons come back before anything happens. So clearly it's another sign that he's losing command of the family. He's not in charge anymore. His sons are going to take care of this. Um, and then, of course, and it's the brothers really who negotiate, with Shechem and his father. Jacob stays silent during all of this. It almost reminds you of when Abraham's servant, goes to find a wife for Isaac. Even though Rebekah's father is Bethuel, he's not involved in this. It's her brother Laban, who negotiates the marriage. And the same thing's happening here. Jacob is really just a bystander here, and his sons are the ones who are negotiating with them. And of course, what they're describing, of course, obviously they're lying. They have no intention of assimilating, intermarrying with this other tribe, because they figure that their land's going to be theirs eventually anyway. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob have been promised this land, so there's no need to marry the Canaanites in order to get the land. But it really shows how the family dynamics have totally changed at this point. And then, of course, the rest of the story starts at 18 and goes through 31. Someone wants to read that.
Sure. Their proposal seemed good in the view of Hamor and in the view of Shechem, Hamor's son. The youth did not delay doing the thing, for he wanted Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most respected of all his father's household. Hamor, with the son Shechem, came to the gate of their city and spoke to the people of their city, saying, These people are peaceable with us. Let them settle in the land and trade in it. For see, there is ample room in the land for them to settle in the land and trade in it. For see, there is ample room in the land for them. Let us take their daughters for ourselves as wives and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the people acquiesce with us to dwell with us to become a single people, that all our males become circumcised as they themselves are circumcised, their livestock, their possessions, and all their animals. Will they not be ours? Only let us acquiesce to them, and they will settle with us. All the people who depart through the gate of the city listens to Hamor and his son Shechem, and all the males, all those who depart through the gate of the city were circumcised. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, and they came upon the city confidently, and killed every male. And Hamor and Shechem his son they killed on the point of sword. They then took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and they plundered the city which had defiled their sister. Their flocks, their cattle, their donkeys, whatever was in the town, and whatever was in the field they took. All their wealth, all their children and wives they took captive, and they plundered, as well as everything in the house. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have discomposed me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanite and among the Perizzite. I am few in number, and should they band together and attack me, I will be annihilated, I and my household. And they said, Should he treat our sister like a harlot?
Well, there's one interesting thing about, Hamor and Shechem, when they talk to their own people, they
Yeah.
don't mention Dinah at all. They're pitching this totally as an economic proposition. We got a chance to really make some money with these people. They got lots of flocks and herds. We need to marry into this. These guys know how to make money. There's no mention of this whole thing is being done just to get a wife, for Shechem. Well, most of it might not have gone over. And here again, you have one more evidence that Jacob is really over the hill. I mean, two of his sons take it on himself without asking him, without his authority, and massacre this entire city. And again, it's interesting when they finally Jacob's objection to it is not a moral objection. He said, "How can you lie to all these people and then massacre them all?" And he's just saying, this is going to make me look bad. That's his only real objection. It's going to. We've got to live with these people. It's going to give me a really bad reputation. He makes no moral judgment on it at all. So again, it's the same old Jacob. I don't think he's really changed all that much. Um, and then
This
the next,
in
yeah,
in this one, the Robert Alter version, there's a interesting comment. It says Meir's Sternberg in 1985 provides illuminating commentary on the interplay of opposing moral claims in the story. Shuley notes that this is a shocking revelation just before the end of the story. We might have imagined that Shem was petitioning in good faith for Dinah's hand, but it emerges at the end that he has been holding her captive in his house after having raped her. So I guess he's interpreting it as like they had to go in and rescue her.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's it says they took Dinah out of Shechem's house. Yeah, so apparently they were you can make the point that they were holding her hostage.
Yeah.
We have her physically. Now we just want you to agree to let Shechem marry her. By the way, if you've never read it, there's a great book written about this episode from Dinah's point of view. The one person who's not consulted in all this is Dinah. She's just an object in there. She has no agency at all in this whole thing. But there's a great book that was written a few years back that gives the story from Dinah's point of view. It's called The Red Tent,
Oh, yeah,
and it
that's
was written.
marvelous. That's a terrific book.
You've read it, yeah. It's a terrific book. It's written by a woman named Anita Diamant, who, by the way,
Yeah,
was a
I know.
Greenville native, although she doesn't live here now. But it's really a great book. It gives you a totally different perspective on the whole Jacob story, really. As Dina experiences, Dina's description of Jacob, her description of her mother Leah and Rachel and all the other people, and what happens to her. It's really it's great. It's a great book to read.
Apparently, they made a miniseries out of it too.
I think they did. Yeah, I never saw it, but I heard about it somewhere. But
There's
the
many
book is
drivers
really
in it,
worth
but yeah.
reading. Yeah. And the next section goes on. The next step in Jacob's life is chapter 35, and that's 1 through 15. If someone wants to read that,
I'll keep trucking. I can remember where they were.
God
Okay.
said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and remain there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So Jacob and his household and to all who were with him, rid yourselves of the alien gods in your midst, purify yourselves and change your clothes. Come, let us go to Bethel, and I will build an altar there to God, who answered me when I was in distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone. They gave to Jacob all the alien gods they had and the rings that were on their ears, and Jacob buried them under their terebinth that was near Shechem. As they set out, a terror from God fell on the cities around them, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Then Jacob came to Luz, there is Bethel, in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. There he built an altar and named it El Bethel, for there was where God had revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Bethel, so it was named Elon Bakuth. God appeared again to Jacob on his arrival from Padam Aram and blessed him. God said to him, "You whose name is Jacob, you shall be called Jacob no more, but Israel shall be your name." Thus he named him Israel, and God said to him, "I am El Shaddai, be fertile and increase. A nation and assembly of nations shall descend from you. Kings shall arise from your loins. The land that I assigned to Abraham and Isaac, and I assign to you and your offspring to come, will I assign the land." Do you want me to keep reading?
some interesting stuff here. One is that Jacob is going back, basically to where he started. When he first leaves home after the business with the birthright, the first place he camps is Bethel. That's where he has that dream with the ladder and the angels going up and down. He names it Bethel, the house of God. And so here he's kind of coming around full circle. He's coming back to Bethel. One of the rabbinic commentators said it's just like a lot of old people like to go back to places that were significant in their youth to visit them again. It's a sign that Jacob is really getting on in years, that he's doing this. The other interesting thing is, he tells his people to rid yourself of alien gods. So apparently, all of them are not into this new monotheism thing yet. And if you think about it, it probably makes sense because all the people in Jacob's household are people that he got while he was with Laban. His wives, his concubines, his children, all of them are born in Padam Aram, Mesopotamia. They're all growing up with Laban. We have the episode of Rachel, who steals her father's teraphim, her father's household gods. And so, this is Jacob with a bunch of pagans still. A lot of these people are still worshiping the idols, that they were used to worshiping back when they were in Mesopotamia. And here he's kind of trying to convert them. Uh, the other thing, which is kind of interesting, is here again the story of his name change. But we've already had that back when he wrestled with the angel, and so this is, I think, another good example how you have the same story told twice. And apparently, the editors of the Bible have no trouble with that. Here he's changing his name again when he's already done it, before. And so we really just have two versions of the same story, essentially. And then the rest of it is it ends with verses 16 through 29. Actually, you guys have been doing all the reading. I'll read the last of the verses, 16 through 29. Um, they journeyed from Bethel, and there was still a stretch of land to go to Ephrath, where Rachel went into labor and had difficulty in childbirth. And it was when she had difficulty in her labor, and the midwife said to her, "Have no fear, for this one too is a son for you." She's already had one son, which is Joseph, and now she's going to have her second son. And it came to pass, as her soul was departing, for she was dying, that she called his name Ben Oni, which is really son of my affliction. But his father called him Ben Yamin, and Yamin is Hebrew for the right hand, son of my right hand, which is kind of a more positive name. Then Rachel died and was buried on the road to Ephrath, which is in Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a monument over her grave. It is the monument of Rachel's grave until today. And of course, Rachel actually is the only one of all the patriarchs and matriarchs who's not buried in the cave of Machpelah at Hebron, that Abraham originally bought. She's buried along the road here. And actually, there is a shrine of Rachel, which was built, I think, in the early Middle Ages. And it's a big thing with Kabbalists. People go there on pilgrimages. It's in what is now the occupied West Bank. But the idea among the Kabbalists is if you take a long stretch of red yarn and you wrap it around the monument 7 times, and you have to say that, the proper Kabbalistic prayers, along with it, that it becomes a fertility charm. And what they would do is take this length of red yarn and cut it into pieces and make bracelets out of it. And as time went on, for the Kabbalists, it became kind of an all-purpose protective amulet. And you still see some people in Hasidic communities where Kabbalah is really big, and they're wearing these red yarn bracelets. I think it was even popular in Hollywood Kabbalah. I think people like Madonna were wearing these red bracelets. But this is where it really comes from this thing with the tomb of Rachel. And then the last significant thing starts with verse 21. Israel journeyed on, and he pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. And it came to pass, while Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard. And this is a big deal because symbolically, this when you have sex with one of your father's concubines or wives, it really means that you're taking over for him. Where we see that again in the Bible is when David's son Absalom, rebels against him. And David is during the fighting, David has to evacuate Jerusalem for a while, and Absalom takes it over. And Absalom has sex with David's concubines, as a symbolic act that he's taking over for his father. And of course, Reuben is never forgiven for that. This is the reason why Reuben, who is not who is Jacob's firstborn, is not given the birthright. And the next two sons, the second and third sons of Jacob, are Shimon and Levi, and they're denied the birthright also because of what they did in Shechem, because of that massacre they had. And so the birthright eventually goes to the fourth son of Leah, which is Judah, which is why we're Jews today. But Reuben loses his birthright really with this act. Okay. And then it ends up, if you skip over to verse 27, Jacob came to Isaac his father at Mamre, Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And Isaac's days were 180 years, and Isaac expired and died, and he was gathered to his people, old and fulfilled of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him, which again is kind of odd when you think about it, because you remember 20 years or more than 20 years before this, you know, when Jacob first tricks Isaac, you know, to get the birthright, you know, this is played as a deathbed scene. You know, Isaac is very old, he's blind and he's dying. And you know, and they want him to give a blessing to one of his sons before he dies. And now this is more than 20 years later, and Isaac finally dies. And again, you know, the Bible really doesn't care much about chronology. You know, it's very likely that Isaac died much earlier, but they're listing him as dying now. And you know, the fact that it doesn't make any sense chronologically, again, doesn't bother the writers of the Bible. And then the rest of that parsha is, you know, starts with chapter 36, and it's really a long, boring stretch. They just give all the descendants of Esau the whole chapter. It's just one of these long, you know, long list of begots that goes on and on forever. Um, the only one which is at all interesting, if I can find it in chapter 36, uh, yeah, if you look at verse 12 in chapter 36, it's the one I think really significant verse. And Timnah was a concubine of Eliphaz, son of Esau, and she bore Amalek to Eliphaz. And of course, Amalek, you know, is the historic worst enemy of the Jewish people. And we pick up with them again later on in the desert odyssey after the Exodus. And so here again, you know, Esau and Jacob are always going to be antagonists in one way or the other. And when they're in the desert after the Exodus, here again they're attacked by Eliphaz, one of the grands by excuse me by Amalek, descended from the grandson of Esau. So the Esau Jacob thing, you know, goes on. Really. Okay. Um, any questions or comments about what we covered? You know, this parsha. Well, the parsha for next week, if anybody wants to read ahead, is Vayeshev. And of course, that starts with chapter 37. And it goes all the way, because it's beginning the story of Joseph. It starts with chapter 37. It goes to chapter 38 and 39 and 40. Actually, it's
Yeah.
really 4 chapters. It really runs on. But we'll talk about that next week.
Right. Sounds good.
Sounds
Thanks, Ben.
great.
Okay. So see you guys next week.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.
See you
Thanks,
next
Sue.
week.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah.